Hey, do I need to do the music again, or
Yeah, you
what?
probably should. Yeah.
Because
We can always piece things together if we have to.
this is George. Someone's watching me from the '80s. It's pretty thematic, eh? It's really, like I said, a cry for help. If you can think of a good theme song or something that's not from the '80s, we'd appreciate it. But on that note, so we're pivoting a bit. We're going CISO Club. So George, why don't you tell us who you are and what you do and what brings you to BSides?
Cool, yeah, Carl. My name is George Al-Koura. I'm the CISO for a company called Ruby Life, which is an online dating company. Our flagship brand, you might have heard of it, is Ashley Madison. And like I said, I very much enjoy running the security operations there and anything to do with security in that organization for all of our brands. And beyond that, I still maintain a foot in the door with various other public sector organizations and boards. And I try to contribute around Ottawa whenever possible.
I actually thought Ruby Life was a life insurance company when I first saw that you you got that promotion.
Got a co-brand and sub-brand.
I thought it was like literally a programming language, and I was like, they have a company for this? I was like, oh, okay.
And then I learned what it really is last night, actually.
Yeah.
The second thing I learned about the world you're in is you're getting into online gaming and very, what's the right word? Some real threat actors. The crypto world and real, let's call it real hardcore next-gen cyber with scary names like the Lazarus Group chasing you, that kind of stuff. So that takes you to Toronto though, right? So you're back at BSides Ottawa. Why?
Back at BSides Ottawa because I started my career here. Like I'm a washed-up SIG-enter. I'm washed up. So when I started my career in cybersecurity, my first job was at CGI. It was a big global MSSP. And most of the folks that I worked with are all still in the area, just working in different shops now. Some folks are actually still at CGI, but my early career mentors are there. A lot of people that I looked up to, a lot of people I genuinely enjoyed. And BSides is always a chance to kind of it's like a yearly high school reunion, right, for the career. Like there's a lot of good people, there's good value, there's a real community that's close knit, that's growing, but the connections, the relationships are real. And when you get into kind of the Ottawa cyber community, the Ottawa IT services space, people maintain these relationships for years, and it's things like BSides that allow those relationships to keep becoming renewed and stay fresh and stay active, and the new business that comes out of, hey, haven't seen you since last year, but I got some opportunities. Good things come when you go to BSides. That's it.
Wow, you nailed it.
Amen.
Steve and I, we did our trailer, which is code for seeing that the AV works, and we said that it's like, it's a reunion for us. This makes sure that we have the podcast at BSides makes sure we have a reunion.
Yeah, because I can't talk to him during the day because he's not allowed to use his phone, and I have a kid at night, so I'm not allowed to use my phone. So basically, it's BSides. That's what
And it's the weirdness of the Ottawa the uniqueness of the Ottawa cyber community forces it to be tight knit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good call. Hey, you've been there, done that. Inquiring minds want to know. So, what's the George origin story? You touched on it that you came from Ottawa, but a lot of people out there see a lot of jobs and fame and money in cyber. How do you crack into the market? A, B, how do you become George the CISO?
Yeah, so in terms of how I got into the industry, it's kind of a bit of an accident. Our good friend Bill is sitting here, he's saying the same thing. It's kind of the same thing for me. When I left the Army, I had a couple different startups going, and I was really trying to learn how to do this entrepreneur thing. I did good for a little bit, but then suddenly the government, policy changed. A lot of professional services contracts got pulled, money got dried up. I had to pay bills, right? And I don't know. I had a friend who happened to work at CGI at the SOC. He was a buddy of mine from the Army, and this, I hate to say it, like, it's tough about the the who you know thing, but it really is who you know in this industry.
That's been the consensus today.
And my friend, he got me a shot to get an interview because they were looking to hire a junior analyst, and I was like, hey dude, I know barely anything. I studied a little bit of this stuff on my night shifts before I left the SI world, but not enough to go into a professional interview. So we literally we went to a bar called the Poor Boy on Somerset, and we drank for 3 days.
For 3 days.
And then he taught me, between that and his house down the street on Arthur,
Okay.
and he taught me everything about networking basics. Like
Wow.
we just went through everything together. And another guy here, so my buddy T, and then Steve Larson, who's also here at the con, he was there for that too. So he's pretty sure at Bell now. But so with those two guys, I learned networking basics, crash course right before my interview. I showed up to the interview. The manager, who's a brilliant guy, his name was Tim Hersey. He kind of knew, and this is a bit of advanced thinking for him for the time. It was 2016. The actual technical skills didn't matter because people can learn those on the job. It was more about critical thinking and can you be a good team player.
Wow.
So I only had like 4 or 5 technical questions on the interview. The rest of it were just about how would you deal with this situation? How would you draft a report for this?
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on this type of order from your management, right? And when you demonstrate that kind of maturity and that trust, that got me a shot at being a level 1 analyst. And then from there, shifting gears of how to make my way up, you're doing the level 1 thing full time. You're at a global shop. It's a lot of like basically customer support when it's on the overnights.
Right.
And it's
it's a glorified call center.
Look,
when you start.
Analyzing packets is super exciting until you realize how boring analyzing packets is, right? And so I was like, okay, I have all this time on my night shifts. I went through each and every single one of their contracts. And so what I found was they had actually sold managed threat intelligence services to some clients. And when I looked at our actual service lineup, like within the MSP, I was like, oh, we don't actually have a dedicated CTI service, but we've sold it. And so I think it's part of those big omnibus kind of larger corporation or government type contracts where it's like, let's just include everything, cover your ass, but then like as a major service provider, you're just gonna rope all it in because you can charge for it. So I went to a VP who, again, I had known because I had a previous relationship with him in the Army. I said, hey, so we sold this thing, we're not delivering, and I think I can try to do it. He gave me a shot. He's like, all right, you got 3 months, build a service, take it to market. I had no clue what I was doing. No clue. Like I knew security intelligence because I'd done that for a living. I kind of knew cyber, I was learning it, but I could figure out, all right, taking care of adversaries. How do we deal with adversaries and how do we build security-based decisions from what we assess from those adversary actions and behaviors?
But it was a thought experiment approach versus an experiential one. Like I was just realizing I'm always an accidental tourist because I really think the jobs you get in cyber, you're 50% ready to do them. Like it's not, oh, I've already done this one, this is cake. It's, how am I going to do that? I've never done that before.
Yeah, and I mean, somehow it actually worked, and I learned how to do selling, right? Because I would be there trying to sell my service and grow it. So I worked with the sales side of the house. I worked with our solutions engineers. I really got a first-hand knowledge of how the cyber business works.
Right. And
because I was at a big global shop, I was able to experience the taste of all these different roles, depending on the client, depending on the contract, depending on the engagement. A lot of the SIGINT skills I knew before, where it's like, let's take some highly technical material, figure out a way to bake it down into a language that non-technical decision makers can understand, and you have 30 seconds or less to convey that information because a critical life-saving decision has to be made. Thankfully, I've not in the cyber world had to advise on a thing that's people's lives are on the line, but in my previous job, yes. So that same skill set carries over when I have to talk to boards, when I have to talk to C-suites, when I have to ask for money or justify ROI. I can take those complicated issues and I can either have the technical level conversation with my TLs or my analysts, or I can have that conversation in simplified language with those decision makers, which I think showed them trust, and that continued like the growth of my career. And just for folks listening, just as a tip, I'm a second-gen Canadian. My mom's an off-the-boat Arab, and it's not that she's not a smart lady, but she's not the most technically savvy person in the world. So what I would do is I would take my pitch presentations before I go to different clients or prospects or other C-suites.
You're running them by mama.
Ran them by my mom. If my mom could understand them, then I knew I was on gold. So that's kind of really the value for growth in our career, in our business, is about your ability to effectively communicate.
Wow. That's
what it comes down to.
I want to catch you on a couple of things because some other people have touched on it, and that's you can't do cyber without cybersecurity as a business enabler. If you can't take your cyber technical skills and also deal with the business side, you're not the translator.
No.
And so you got to do a bit of both. It's unlike another job where, okay, I'm going to go from being a specialist to the generalist to the manager, and now I'm decoupled and now I'm dealing with corporate and people. You always got to do both, but to your other point, it's still got to be top floor to shop floor. You can't be a CISO if you do not understand everybody's job down below. You don't have to be an expert, but you better understand what PowerShell is. You better still hang around and keep having the ability to talk to the boots on the ground to take it back up. It's not a hierarchical.
If you don't maintain that knowledge, that's how Equifax happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you have a non-technical CISO with no interest in maintaining technical knowledge, really poor decisions get made, right? And again, even if you don't, like, you really shouldn't be spending too much time doing fingers on keyboard stuff because you're overpaid way too much for that. But you got to know enough to be dangerous.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well,
and you have to stay relevant. You can't just say, "Well, I was good at Cisco Pix."
It's the who moved my
like,
cheese
oh, that was
thing.
20 years ago.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. The other two
So-
comments around that were like, you continuous learn is a swell comment, but cyber's the once business thing where there's an opponent.
Yeah.
And so if you're really good at X, someone's going to move your cheese, right? And you go, okay, AI's coming, this is coming, and they're going to own you. You just can't decide to go, I'm just going to be an expert here and ignore that. Cyber says you got to go chase the next thing, and you'll get humbled real quick if you're trying to live in your legacy world.
Well, the other thing too is, like, don't be ashamed of going to the Google machine, because I don't know a lot more than I do know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
right.
Google was my university.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, look, you deal with certain, like, if you deal with Splunk, query-based language, like, do you think I remember all those commands off? No.
Yeah.
Like, give me a break.
I remember pushing the, what I love about Splunk is you could record your scripts. Like, I did this search and I was telescoping, I was going all over the place, and I went, I totally forget how I got here. Log.
Yeah, but again, like, for the folks listening, just in terms of like how to actually get through the gate, it's really about networking in a directed manner where you're looking for people who are decision makers or folks who have influence over decision makers in the types of jobs that you want to work for. And I think there's a lot of romanticization of our field and the different job categories in it. At the end of the day, look, you get the job, guess what? 90% of the job is absolutely boring as hell.
It's not what you're.
It's the grind.
No,
It's not the peak, and that's.
No, and to me, I think of it like I was in the artillery for a minute. Like, 95% of that job is boring as hell. But the 5% of the time that's like on, it is psychotically exciting.
Yeah.
Like, you are freaking out that time, and you have to learn to balance, because InfoSec is the same thing. Like, most of your shifts, false positive, it's not an alert, it's not a thing, it's not a thing.
Yeah.
But that one day
Yeah.
that there's an adversary that has presence in your environment, and they're throwing like low and slow to try to bypass any sort of alerting, and you have to have that pattern recognition skill. You have to pay attention, even when it's boring as hell and you're on your 4th coffee and it's 3 a.m. That's what makes you a good analyst. There's nothing sexy about this, man. And I think that's what people need to realize, is that you're not going to walk out of college or some program and walk into a sexy job. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a CISO. I still don't think my job's that sexy.
You have to go to some cool places.
But it's that 5%, like you said. Hey, the 5% that's awesome. It's if you're an adrenaline junkie, if you are a mission person, yeah, it's worth it.
It's worth it.
But it's the 95% prep that's boring.
Well, like, look, in my last employer, like, it was a different industry and different sector, but like, we stopped the major DDoS attack points. And it was like me and my buddy and like our IT director, and we were like, okay, cool, like, we stopped this thing. And it's like, this was a really persistent attack. We find out, like, I think it was like 11 or 12 days later, because our friends from public safety knocked on the door and said, hey, by the way, that was Fancy Bear. We're like, oh shit. Wow. So, again, but it's like, you don't know, and you don't find out until sometimes later on. But you have to have the core fundamentals. You have to have vigilance in the best practices, because that's what makes you good at the job. And I think a lot of people, they don't have the attention span to do the unsexy, or I should say, unsexy and thankless labor to get there.
Yeah, and like, there are ways to make it easier, simpler, I guess, not easier.
Yeah.
But like, sometimes, like, if you're new, and you think, oh, you know what, I could probably filter out some of this stuff that we know is false positives.
Yeah.
There might be someone there who says, don't.
Yeah.
Why? We need to see everything.
Yeah.
And then you're like,
Right.
oh, so what are we getting from all of this?
Yeah.
And that's where, like, then you have to have that hyper attentiveness, because if you're not, like, it's just, as a new person coming in, you're not going to question things too, right? You're like, well, okay, because like I don't know, and you do clearly because you've been here longer. And then I think the next step is understanding when to push back on something like that, and that's something you have to develop after you're in the door, and that's just literally, you have to keep learning, you have to keep improving, otherwise you're always going to get kind of pushed around like that.
That was one answer that surprised and impressed me, and that's, Carl, it's not aptitude, it's attitude on the way in. In other words, I think I can train you on the soft skills. They're not hard, system in, whatever. They're grindy, but they're trainable. What's not trainable is show me your intangibles. Have you got curiosity? Have you got persistence? Have you got a bunch of...
Dude, have you not worked 24/7 sock? Are you gonna show up to work on time and be sober? like
Right?
let's be
No
real.
comment.
bro.
and I can teach you the rest if you can hang around. And so back to the next point of networking, it's not networking sysadmin, it's networking, yeah, in hindsight, oh, I got a lucky break because I knew that person, is, yeah, but I did some FaceTime with the person and I convinced them I had that attitude. Because you can't list those words on a resume.
Well, look, like you asked me, like, how did I get from working analyst or senior consultant into an executive role, right?
Right.
I sat on this board before. It was a public-private board, and there were like a whole bunch of CEOs and C-suites from like the big defense companies in the city and in Canada, and then there's like ADM or DM level folks in like global affairs and defense and industry and that kind of thing. They're all sitting on this board, and they had a couple spots for like entrepreneur type folks, and that's how I got up there, because I was like, what am I doing sitting at the same table with Lockheed, but like whatever.
Yeah.
And so they spent a bunch of money putting in this big like survey-based report on like the state of cyber in Canada, and this was like 4 or 5 years ago. And I participated in the survey, and they came back with it and they presented the information. And so they're all chewing on this report and they're talking about it, and they spent like $50,000 or $75,000. I'm pretty sure of taxpayer money on this report. And I'm reading the thing, and they're talking about certain areas of the talent gap and certain issues within the country, but then they're not addressing like what I would consider the actual critical working issues. As someone who's a consultant with federal clients, provincial clients, commercial clients, I'm like, okay, I kind of see different perspectives. And so I was like getting really annoyed because they're spending all this time and they're patting themselves on the back about this great report, this great survey. So I raised my hand and I was like, hey, so I have a question about this. How many people here, and I remember this exactly, how many people here, fingers on keyboard, have actually done network security operations in the last 10 years? Keep your hands raised. And I had my hand raised and I looked around, not a single one of them had.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, how many of you ever? I looked around, again, not any of them had. I looked in the back room, I remember this moment. I looked in the back room, I saw 4 colonels sitting in the back, like military officers, just laughing to each other. Like they knew what I just done. I just put egg on all their faces. And I was like, well, that's kind of the problem with this report. And that was it. After that, a former CEO of ours, Carl, came up to me. She was at that meeting. She was like, hey, maybe we should hang out sometime. Which eventually led into the conversation and the job offer and all that kind of thing. But I had the balls, and I was an idiot.
I
just call something out.
When people say accidental tourist or fluke, I get corrected when I talk about myself, and I go, well, no, you had something to do with it. But I think your cyber career finds you.
Yeah.
Because you're saying something in the audience, and someone goes, hey, why don't you come and work for me? I go, doing what? And you go, I didn't think that was an opportunity. I didn't even know it was there. Yeah. Cyber kind of finds you. And the other quote you have on the way in is, you cut yourself from cyber. Yeah. It's a wrestling team, right? There's no football team tryout. You show up and you decide if you want to stay, and if you leave, you're cut. But if you stay, you're on the team.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See how I worked the wrestling thing back in? Wrestling and bears are the common themes. I don't know. I don't have a bear story for you, but those are the two the common. One guy wrestled a bear, so he gets a double.
Oh, you're talking about Phil? Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Again, to anyone listening, look, this is all achievable. I'm on year 2016, this is what, 8 years since that?
Right.
I'm on year 8 of my career. I achieved executive status at year 4. I achieved CISO status at year 6. I'm an idiot. I have a degree in politics and psychology. I don't even have technical education. I have like proudly skipped away from doing my system testing or system or any of that. I've done the courses, it's great. Eventually I'm gonna have to, but like, I love being completely unqualified on paper for my job because I could do my job better than most people I run into.
It's a bit of a contrarian underdog job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's what makes you better. The other thing I'm reminded of is you're one of those people that foreshadowed it. So I feel like I was like, you know, the old Muppet Statler and Wardolph, and you're Gonzo on the stage going, "Hey Carl, like, how do I get up there?" And I go, "Good luck, buddy." And then the next thing I know, you've repelled yourself up. I go, "Oh my God, he's up to me. Like, how did he do that?" And the answer is,
call it a neurotypical thing, but I'm like the kind of person that like, you know, I'll run through something 10 steps in advance before anyone else, and I'll be like, we should avoid that, or like I'll see something and kind of laugh at a joke, and other people just won't even see it, and then eventually they'll pick it up later. But it's like the way my mind works is just different. I don't know.
Interesting. I don't know what the adjective for that is, but what people said, we like this guy Carl as a consultant because in an organization, in the first 2 weeks, he'll step on every landmine there is, because I don't understand hierarchy or horizontal, but it's a skill, right? If you can come back alive, you're the one that has the kind of the treasure map that everyone was afraid to unveil, right?
Yeah, like I'm also just not really. I don't find people intimidating. Like outside of my life, like I do silly things, like I fight people for sport. So I don't find people in the context of business necessarily intimidating. Like you're just a person. You got to put your pants on one leg at a time.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been told, I've learned the hard way because I'm an accidental tourist with the military folks and the secret clearance folks, but you don't use business metaphors around like war rooms.
Yeah.
And to your point of like, this is going to be an adversarial meeting, I go like, I mean, people are going to throw punches? They go, no, metaphorically. I go, I play hockey, man. Like, you're not going to be in a business suit starting to intimidate me, where I go, you look like you want to fight me.
Well, plus the cool thing for the most part in the business context, away from, like if you're not in the military, like it's not like a government level type thing. If someone's really offensive enough during a business meeting, like I literally just like, I don't have to be here. I'll just get up and leave.
Yeah, good call.
Like you gotta learn to like set your own boundaries. And I think, by the way, for the sake of career success in the private sector, because a lot of organizations take advantage of their starting students and the folks that are just coming in, you have to set healthy boundaries, right? If your on-call hours are these hours and your on-time hours are these hours, stick with that. And then I find the higher up I've gotten, in case like shit goes absolutely south, and hopefully you guys censor this thing.
We're not going to.
Okay.
Hell's no.
My CEO, my CIO, and like my team leads are the ones that can contact me on official work meetings after business hours. Other than that, piss off.
Yeah.
I'm on my evening time. I'm on my weekend time. I don't want to know.
Is that a military thing? Because I heard the same thing about 24/7 war, but the generals had a code of, you can contact me about these 3 things, like someone dies in battle, at these times.
Yes.
Otherwise, like, don't knock on the door.
No, because our job is to make decisions. And if I'm mentally exhausted and I had a chance to rest because I'm dealing with tactical level problems all the time, I can't make the necessary strategic positions that I'm supposed to be.
You have people for that. You have the team of teams kind of thing, right?
Yes, I enable and empower my team leads who are smarter than me, because I purposely made sure they were smarter than me, so I don't have to deal with this shit on a daily basis.
The myth of mission people having no boundaries is bullshit.
Yeah. So again, I hope people take some value from that. I'm just like a blue collar dude from a blue collar town. The other thing too,
I think he's singing a song. He's talking about a song. What
Kingston.
You're from Kingston. Okay.
But like
he went to the other university.
Yeah. But I'm saying like look, this career, I love it. I'm passionate about my job. I love this thing. This doesn't define who I am. It's not my life. I'm gonna do some stuff after this. I want to give myself like 10 more years doing this thing. And then hopefully I achieve the goals I want to achieve. I want to do something completely different that has nothing to do with tech at all. And I think the healthiest way to approach a thing is like, my identity is not tied to this. It's just a job, just a paycheck. There is more to life. And I think if you can remember that, then you can go through this career and not go insane.
And that's epic, because I've been through that lack of separation.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, to like try and figure that out, I had to read Mark Manson's book.
Yeah, that's
And
really
I was
cool.
like,
Yeah.
and it's dumb because it's so common sense,
Yeah.
but it's just the act of actually stopping and reading it was basically like, so that's probably the number one piece of advice that everyone should take into account. Once you're in, make sure that you still have a life and don't burn yourself
I
out.
think that's the unfortunate Achilles heel. The type of people that are attracted to cyber and the nature of SOC fatigue and lack of resources, that's the Achilles heel. That's the potential Achilles heel that if I was telling people there's a shadow side, it's take care of that. Don't say you're a no boundaries, I'll just work my ass off all the time, because it's the opposite. If you go to the military, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's the diminishing returns, right? The more, like, if I work 15 hours a day, I get 6 hours of work done. If I work 8 hours a day, I get 7 hours of work done.
Or if I'm a decision guy, I should wear the same pants every day. I should have someone make my lunch. I should not have to make a lot of decisions because I'm in the decision
I would
business.
love if I had an EA who just took care of all my shit and just told me where to go and what to do and be at what time. I would just be in heaven. Yeah.
You heard it here. George is recruiting.
I think that's a wrap, dude.
Yeah,
that's
awesome.
awesome.
That was awesome,
Thank
man.
you so much, man. Also, George has his own podcast.
Yeah.
Bare Knuckles and Brass Tacks.
Look us up on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts as well. We are constantly broadcasting everywhere. We have a new episode every week. So please, and if you're interested, and if you're an industry person, let us know because we'd love to have you on if you got a good story.
Oh, awesome.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Thanks so much, man.
Do you have theme music for that thing I could borrow, or?
Dude, I actually looked up 2 theme songs.
Oh.
Why would you not just